All right. Well, welcome back to Blurry Creatures. Joe Allen, author, researcher, and transhumanism specialist. I don't know what title do you go for?
Rogue.
All
yeah.
Right. I like
Raconteur.
Yeah. Hopefully you feel like at home in your parents' basement here.
Yeah, it's definitely a throwback for someone who's very averse to the future. I feel
exactly.
I feel this, it's interesting though. Looking here, you do see the seeds of what would become the transhuman, possibly reality. Certainly, the vision first coming to fruition, right?
Yeah.
The beginning of the VR headset over here with the coin operated arcade game. It feels great. Feels great.
That's a great transition.
The Cyclops behind me.
That's right.
Yeah.
We met Joe at Birthright Birthright Conference, and we enjoyed. We sat outside and had a little table, enjoyed your presentation. Then we had to hang at the VIP event later, and we talked about doing this, and we finally got you here in person from Knoxville. So great to have you. Talk about what you've been up to, I guess, since we've seen you in the last 4 years, and the things that you've been working on and what you've been doing.
The book was a major accomplishment.
Yeah. Congrats.
400 pages and 100 pages of citation. So, Dark Aeon, Transhumanism and the War Against Humanity. It is a year and a couple months old now, and I've determined that by January 1st, I'll never mention it again.
Okay.
If anybody asks, I may answer. I may just pretend like I didn't hear it. But I was given free reign.
Inspector Gadget. The book just explodes after you read it.
Yes,
it's just gone.
This book will self-destruct January 1, 2025.
I'm not liable, by the way.
Okay.
If any fingers are lost,
right.
you were warned. But I think I said about as much as I want to say about the topic for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Basically, maybe give me a microphone and I'll stand in front of whatever company spearheads the singularity, and I'll be like, it's here, and then go back to my bunker in the forest.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Blurry Creatures is related to this topic. I think we've talked about it a few times on our show, but not extensively. We haven't really gone into like a deep dive into transhumanism, but people talk about it. And I think it relates to the things that we talk a lot about on our show. It's just like man and machine converging. And I think the mixing of iron and clay, as a lot of the theologians talk about ideas like that, right? And obviously we talk a lot about like if humans and angels were created the giants, and we think so. And we've talked to tons of theologians about that concept, but this is like a different sort of version of machine and humans coming together, but it feels very Genesis 6, so to speak, I
think it also feels like Revelation, right? Because in the end of Revelation, you have this idea that like they'll beg for death and it won't come to them. So there's this idea of humanity 2.0,
is that
upgrading. And you see that we've seen this. We talked about sort of the slow conditioning on pre-roll, but the idea that like we need to continue to upgrade our humanity, whether it be through pharmakia, and now through the advent of technology, the explosion of technology since the 1950s has been insane. I was talking about this with some friends last night. Like just you go from like color TV in a box like behind you. Like I remember getting up with my grandparents, and like there's
this is where it should have stayed.
6 channels, right? And they'd be like, "Look, good, change the channel." I was the remote, right? To now where we have supercomputers in our pockets, and things like Elon Musk talking about Neuralink and installing chips, which is if we're all kids of the 80s. I remember in going to Christian school in 6th grade and watching the Mark of the Beast video, right? Mm-hmm. Which was like, they're going to put, computer chips in your arms and stuff, but we've arrived in a lot of ways. Like there are people volunteering now to have
we should have stayed right
technology
here.
implanted in their body, right? To do whatever it is that they feel like it's most convenient to do.
How did you get into transhumanism, Joe? How did that even become like an interest?
I mean, it's been an interest. There was no point at which I was suddenly obsessed. Probably my first thinking on it was at the age of 16 after a profound experience that I had. I'll leave it at that. But at around 17, I read Ted Kaczynski's Industrial Society and Its Future online.
Okay.
Which is pretty funny.
Online.
And you didn't have a physical copy? You were on the mailing list?
At the time, I didn't know. Although it's interesting. So if there were 3 books that really influenced my thinking at an early age, Ted Kaczynski's tract, the Unabomber Manifesto. Then you had Ray Kurzweil's The Age of Spiritual Machines, which was a physical copy, of course, and which I still have. And then Technosis by a man, Eric Davis.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that kind of got the framework in my mind as I'm seeing in real time society shift. And of course, something else that really influenced me, I go into it in detail in the book, but the biblical interpretations of current events, especially in the 90s. So, you know, I talk about Daniel, I talk about Ezekiel, I talk about Revelation, and the ways in which those visions, those kind of archetypal or allegorical visions reflect the development of these technologies. And in the 90s, you remember, right? It's bringing me back. In the 90s, you had such an aggressive push of the messaging that the end of the world is nigh.
Oh, yeah.
And the year 2000 was a popular date. And I mean, when I was a kid, these things seemed pretty plausible. As I became a teenager and, you know, very skeptical, less plausible, but still it was always in the back of my head. When something is put in your mind that deeply, it never really goes away. And then the year 2000 came, the year 2000 went.
Nothing happened.
Napster came. And destroyed the recording industry.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least turned it into more of a machine than it already was. Then 9/11 came a year and 9 months in. And what's interesting is I think that these sorts of prophecies, to me, whenever I hear any minister speaking in like real specific terms, this is the mark of the beast, this is the Antichrist,
this is the date, right?
Yeah,
we always joke
the date.
99 reasons Jesus comes back in 99. You know, it's a joke now, but it's like we all lived through that. I had friends in high school that they really believed Y2K was the end, and they sold their house. They moved to a bunker in a mountain. And they hid out until it didn't happen, and then they kind of slunk back. But there was a real fear. I remember the same thing because we were all growing up saying everyone's saying something's going to happen, computers are going to glitch, the whole world's going to go down. Yeah, and then it didn't, right? And so I'm with you. Like it's fascinating to have gone through everyone's. I think especially picking a date. This is the return of Christ. Is this date? This date? I've even seen ones this year that have already come and passed, and it's just. It's a weird conditioning though, because then you start to think none of this is ever going to happen, right?
But the Bible is even elusive to it. It's like
no one knows the date or the time, the day or the time. Yeah.
Signs.
To me, the importance is that many of those prophecies have come true now.
Sure.
And but they had already come true centuries before.
Right.
And to me, I see it as very much a perennial image. Whether it be Revelation or Daniel, the mark of the beast, for instance, right?
Right.
You know, Roman soldiers would receive a mark on their hands. Roman slaves would receive a mark on their heads. So you could, you know, many scholars will reduce the book down to the events of the time and say that this is just John or whoever wrote the book describing the Roman Empire and aggression towards Christianity. But I don't think so.
No.
I think that it was just as applicable then as it was in the year 1000, as it was in the year 2000, and may or may not be applicable in the centuries to come, depending on what's left in the centuries to come.
Joe, I like that because, Nate, we talked to Doug Van Dorn, who's been a regular guest on our show, and he wrote a book called The Rings of Revelation, and he actually argues for what you say, like the idea that it's cycles. So Revelation cycles. So you have 70 AD and the destruction of the temple, and you have all these things that come to fruition, but it's going to continue to cycle until it finally doesn't, right? This idea that Revelation can be read in what Doug describes as rings, like as you said, right? So because people will argue that Revelation was fulfilled, the destruction of the temple, and Christ returned somehow, and that's a tough one because actually the things in there some of the things haven't happened. Christ isn't physically ruling, and then we get eschatology, which everyone wants to yell and fight about, which is crazy. But I do think, to your point, Doug's point is a very interesting view, and it makes sense that like
eventually there's a last movie.
There's a last cycle, if you will. Yeah.
They can't make a sequel.
I think they may have already made the last movie, as far as I can tell. Whatever they're putting out now, I mean, we could call them movies. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
It may be too late.
Well, I mean, I mean, technology is going to get to the point where, you know, I'm sure this is where the interest comes, is when, you know, when is it we can't go back. Like obviously 1980s, you know, we had this era that we love because we grew up in, where technology was like a tool. It was something fun, but it didn't take over your life. It didn't consume you. All right, you've heard us talk about the strange, the unexplained, the things that are hiding in the dark. What about the stuff that's sneaking into your kids' books? And I know as parents, it's hard for us these days to know what kind of content to give to our kids. And we partnered with Brave Books, and they're awesome because they're not just, you know, silly books. They're actually really in-depth and give your kids a lot of content to chew on that you can not be worried about.
I know we really appreciate what Brave Books is out there doing, right? Is it's providing high-quality content, amazing stories and books that are engaging with your kids, but the messaging is so important. As you just said, like the more messaging sneaking into our kids' pads, their iPads, their books, and everything else is super alarming, especially when you want to be in control of what your kids are consuming.
They have a battle plan for your kids' worldview. I know everything is going after your kids these days. So Brave Books is here to help you guys as parents. And when you subscribe to Brave, you also get access to Brave Plus, which is a streaming platform filled with safe, uplifting shows, no agenda, no weird stuff, just trustworthy content, like old school stuff like Strawberry Shortcake, Bob the Builder, but also Brave originals like Iggy and Mr. Kirk, starring Kirk Cameron. Brave Books is where it's at.
Brave Plus is a great idea. This is how you really can stay on top of what your kids are watching and consuming. And, of course, all the values that Brave puts forward align with what we do here. It aligns with the Christian and biblical worldview. And it's just something that my kids personally love. Jack loves these books, loves the illustrations, the pictures, and, of course, the words and content.
That's right. So head to bravebooks.com, use code BLURRY to get 15% off, shape their imagination, ground them in truth, and raise them brave. That's bravebooks.com, code BLURRY, BLURRY, to get 15% off.
I would disagree. I think that beginning with the radio, people were writing and warning back then that the radio was somewhat hypnotic, that messaging was coming and influencing the youth and causing rebellion against parents, and that was absolutely true. And then from the radio, the television, and that was unprecedented.
Sure,
it was such a hypnotic tool.
Yeah,
and a means of brainwashing.
Yeah,
and a means of also conveying accurate information.
Yeah.
So then you have very rapidly this uptick in the development of more and more advanced ways of either informing and allowing people to communicate or brainwashing people to hypnotize them. And the smartphone is probably at this point the most important digital technology to ever be created. And it, to me, I mean, it's a mark on the hand.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mark on the head.
Interesting.
But so would be a chip in the hand.
Sure.
And a chip in the head.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of degrees. So that's kind of how I see it. But speaking of specific dates, one of the things that Ray Kurzweil is famous for is his specific dating of the singularity itself and all of the different benchmarks that would be met, the milestones that would be met along the way.
So, Joe, what is, for our listeners and probably for me, what do you mean by singularity?
The singularity is that point in time beyond which no human being can imagine what will happen. And beyond the singularity, no human being would be able to understand what is happening. So really the singularity, there's different people who you could say deserve credit for the term. Vernor Vinge is probably the most important sci-fi writer, passed away, I believe, last year. But Vernor Vinge laid out 6 different scenarios as to what the singularity would be. And I'll just give you 2 that I think are really important. We go through all of them. But the first is that artificial intelligence would just progress so quickly that human beings would lose control of it, that human beings would be at the mercy of it to some extent, and the history would be then in the hands of a machine and not human beings.
Yeah.
The other was the intelligence amplification scenario, in which human beings, either by way of digital technologies, implants, or just the use of digital technologies or genetic enhancement, whatever, the human beings would become so intelligent that human beings today would not be able to comprehend what is happening, right? And so that's why the metaphor of the singularity is important. The singularity is taken from the physics of a black hole.
Yeah.
And as you approach the event horizon, things get wacky, things get wonky, and then beyond the event horizon, no one can know what's going on. Right. And Ray Kurzweil took up that torch, and he cites Vinci, but you'll notice he doesn't talk about him a whole lot. Yeah. I like Vinci's version more because, for one thing, he's a better writer, he's more creative, and he emphasizes the darkness of this potential future in which human beings are demoted to the role of goldfish, as he would put it.
Yeah.
And the machine is now the apex predator.
Right.
But Kurzweil, he's better funded, right, and better connected, and also much more Aspergy. So Kurzweil puts the date of the singularity at 2045. Okay. So in little more than
because I was going to ask.
So 20 years we don't know. That'll be the point which we can't imagine what happens beyond that point as far as the advancement of technology, the diminishing of humanity, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, with Kurzweil, a lot of people say he's anti-human. It's not exactly like that. I mean, he is insofar as what human beings are now. He's very aggressive and very specific. So in a simple form, Kurzweil foresees these machines being billions of times smarter than human beings, right? If you had a machine twice as smart as a human being, that's something profound. Right. You now have a god.
Where are we at now, would you say?
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you.
It depends on how you want to look at it. So say ChatGPT.
Right.
You can ask ChatGPT questions about pretty much anything, and roughly 80 to 85% of the time, it's going to come back with something reasonably accurate and coherent.
Right.
No human being can do that.
No.
Each person may have their specialization,
right,
but and an expert may be way, way better at providing an answer, but no human being could provide that many answers on that many different topics.
Synthesize it that quickly, right?
I wouldn't say a lot. So right now, GPT, Claude from Anthropic, they're all testing. They'll run them through various academic style tests, biology tests, law school tests, mathematics, all of these. In some instances, it scores in the 99th percentile, meaning that in a sense, it's an expert that is smarter than 99% of people on Earth. But
so like genius level at that specific.
Yes. And right now, I mean, it's very difficult to disentangle the hype, which, you think of it as an advertisement. Have you ever received a cheeseburger that looked that good?
Right.
No. Yeah. So that has to be part of the calculus as to whether or not we trust that these people are describing something that's going to come into fruition. It's going to be real. But in the case of, say, ChatGPT under OpenAI with Sam Altman, and of course funded by Microsoft in partnership with Microsoft, they are projecting that GPT-5, which should come out probably next year sometime, will be at PhD level on pretty much any subject.
Wow.
Now, okay, that's the advertisement. Is the cheeseburger actually going to be that good?
Right.
Or is the taco?
That's right.
That tasty.
That's chalupa really going to be that good, right?
Cholito back then.
Oh. I think that at the very least, what we see happening, and I think what people should be very alarmed about, like just from a purely, we can go into outer space anytime you guys want to, but just as far as feet on the ground, what should we expect from the next few years? I do think these systems are going to be more and more sophisticated. We've already seen that in the last 5 years. It's insane how quickly it progressed simply by scaling up the size of the neural networks and the amount of data and the amount of basically energy and information you're throwing at it. And it's not even really the complexity of the neural network so much as just the size. So that has done amazing things as far as creating a disembodied being that you can speak to, and a disembodied being that, for the most part, comes back with reasonable and informed answers. What we also have, though, around all that is all the capital being poured into it You have all of the expectation from the various corporations who are incorporating it right now, the government agencies that are incorporating it, the churches and religious institutions, and of course the educational system. You have schools all over the country that are either dealing with ChatGPT, encouraging students to use it, or any of the other large language models, encouraging students to use it, trying to keep them from cheating with it, so on and so forth. But you have a lot of schools that are set up to use GPT or other large language models or other AIs to instruct students to be teachers themselves. So I think that the most important thing to look at is that the wealthiest men on earth and the most powerful governments on earth and the most powerful corporations on earth believe that this disembodied being should become a companion for most or all people, and that ultimately it will become an authority, not necessarily an authority telling you what to do, although don't rule that out, but an authority in the sense, I trust that this is the information that is going to be the best. It's an authority on subject matter. And in the case of GPT-5, if it is anything close to what they're saying, an authority on most or all subjects.
Yeah, you're not gonna be able to challenge the machine because it's gonna hold the place. I was gonna
say, like, the way you describe it is very interesting. And I know you're being specific, a disembodied, right? Because I think about 2014, Elon Musk saying, with AI, you're summoning the demon. And if we were, pragmatically to talk about the definition of a demon, it's a disembodied spirit. And you have these, I know you're intentional with that. It's this parallel between the way we understand the darkness, and disembodied spirits, and to be evil, and those are demons by definition.
Yeah, like a Ouija board. You're asking something you don't know to give you an answer. I mean, in some ways, that's what we're doing.
And I think it's also fascinating, like you talked about our advancement in technology now. Like, we have, AI aside, with the internet, we have the answer to any question. This is not how any human at any point in time never had at their fingertips to query any question and have an immediate answer.
Yeah, that was a question I had. Like, what's the difference between a search engine and AI, and the AI that we have access to versus whatever they're building behind the scenes?
Not much now, though, because you Google something and there's an AI response now.
Yeah,
it's a top response is like,
well, is AI
I use it for like
Google
recipes, like what can I make with this chicken and everything else I have, and it says, well, you can make this isn't, and here's the links, and and that's not even a search result. That's AI responding to your query with a sort of a synthesized answer, which is, but yeah, to your question, I find it fascinating that we've already shifted in the last couple of years to, let's not go to page 2 of our search results. AI is already going to synthesize all your search results and give you an answer at the top for the most part, right?
Think of it like this. We've always had libraries.
Sure. Yeah. Card catalogs
and
back in our day.
The internet is, in some sense, a massive digitized library.
Yeah.
And Google or any search engine is a librarian who's going to show you where the different books are and present the most relevant books. And AI is that know-it-all at the library who's going to stand over your shoulder and tell you how to interpret it. And it's going to synthesize. He's going to read like Johnny Five, more input. He's gonna read all of it,
80s baby,
and then tell you the answer. Now there are ways to envision this being a good thing.
Yeah.
But I think the progress of, like, even with Google, right? You see this massive bias in the search. By and large, now it's just worthless. I mean, it's not. Some things I can find, but most of it's buried beneath people who have learned how to optimize the search engine results, or somebody who, through pay or otherwise, has been able to curry favor to get to the top. So,
or ideological bias, right? So, you also have this idea of, like, we're pushing. There's a narrative.
Google has that, and then you have with the AI is also an ideological bias, right. Just 100%. Inherently.
Yeah.
Whether it's right or left, by the way. I mean, there's no reason, like Gab AI is, they're trying to create a based AI that, Elon Musk's X, the XAI and Grok, they're trying to create a middle of the road, but at least, marginally based AI. But even that's a bias. Even a middle of the road AI is a bias. So, I think, though, that it's really important to see it as a progression. It's similar to things before, but it's something that is completely new. And whatever the outcome of the development of AI, it's obvious that these people are going to have a lot to answer for when they reorganize economies, reorganize educational systems, medical systems, government agencies. They reorganize all of this around this AI. And if it doesn't perform, well, way to go. It wouldn't be the first time human beings did something really stupid.
Right.
If it does perform, right? Let's say it is an expert in everything. Let's say it does become this authority and it is actually better than human beings. Then you have just basically trained your own replacement.
But what about AI that we don't have access to? I mean, obviously, we talk a lot about government tech and how since the 30s they've had this UFO technology, and we made all ufologists have made a great case that this tech has been reverse engineered for decades, and we get a little glimpses here and there of them testing out this stuff. But there's also things that are completely off the radar in terms of how they know how it works. But
do they have a god in an underground data center?
Yeah. Like we're playing, this feels like child's play AI that we get to, the average person. And there's got to be an AI that's behind the scenes.
Well, there's always going to be something that they're working on in the labs that's beyond what we have, unless they're just really floundering and failing. So the GPT, for instance, GPT 3.5, what we now know as ChatGPT, was already developed when people were playing with 3. Right. And right now, the seeds of GPT-5 are being worked on, maybe even 6, behind the scenes. And we don't get to see it, right? Okay. You can basically, at that point, imagine anything you like. So maybe it's just a hair beyond. Yeah. Maybe they literally have a god in a data center right now giving them all of these super accurate answers about not only how to best organize infrastructure and control the masses, but maybe even has already explained to them in detail the dynamics of the cosmos, has introduced them to every alien species that the system was able to get a hold of, has explained the passage of the soul through the afterlife into the next, and how to manipulate even that metaphysical system. Or you have a lot of engineers banging their heads against their keyboards trying to get something that can at least tell you whether or not it's going to be raining next week. So you can basically imagine anything. Yeah. And that's what people are doing. Now you have whistleblowers all the time that show up. Yeah. And some of them are legit. A lot of them I think are grifters. Because when you have something that ambiguous, anyone can step up. And if you speak with confidence and at least are reasonably charismatic, then until you've just been shown to be a grifter, then you can make some money.
You just can't. Yeah.
So do they have God in silico right now in secret? Don't know. I doubt it. In fact, I think I've been really no fun. When I was talking to you before, I've really become no fun in the last few years because I've always
Somebody invites the transhumanist to the party. Is that what you're saying?
Well, conspiracy theories have always been an obsession of mine.
Yeah, sure.
When I was a kid, I absolutely loved them, whether it be Masonic conspiracies, satanic conspiracies.
The best one of them all right here. Bigfoot, right?
The Bigfoot. There's an archetypal interpretation of Bigfoot too. That,
we'll have to get that
if you guys want to get in there. But I think that, one of my favorite conspiracy theories, especially after reading Kurzweil, is the idea that you have these elites who are secretly and covertly aiming to merge human beings with machines, first through, screens, then chips, then nanobots, and so on and so forth. It turns out that the conspiratorial element of it, by and large, is just reflected in people's ignorance of the topic. It's just, if you don't know, if you aren't reading that stuff that's all out there, and then you find out about it, and then you're like, this has been kept a secret from me this entire time. No, you just didn't know. You just weren't following it, right? Yeah. So, but in the case of the conspiratorial mind is basically trying to take all this disparate information and the gaps of ignorance, fill it in with something that makes sense. And what I see mostly is people kind of writing fiction and putting it forward as fact with a sprinkling of legitimate facts and oftentimes very valuable information that can be extracted. Yeah. But that framing screws a lot of things up. And I think that here's my most unfun interpretation of reverse engineered alien technology and the whole notion that they're 50 years ahead of anything you see today or whatever. It would be amazing to find out that, in fact, most of what we now call digital technology and some of the most exotic and advanced engineering projects are, in fact, the result of reverse engineered crashed UFOs. But they spent all the money hiring the actors and creating the long, detailed records of the step-by-step development of these technologies by humans. They spent all the money fabricating the false history that they're not able to actually keep the infrastructure running. And then the aliens, in disgust at humans' lack of foresight, take off back to the Pleiades or Alpha Centauri and just leave them, let them work it out on their own.
Yeah, it
sounds like a show.
Because I don't think, I mean,
it's a show.
It really. Yes, of course, there are all these secret projects. Yes, of course, nobody knew about the atom bomb before it dropped or the Blackbird or whatever, right? So yes, of course, they have things that are more advanced and you can't know about them because they're top secret unless you pretend to know about them. But with the idea of reverse engineered technology beginning either in the 30s or the 40s or whatever, leading to all the transistors that became computer technology or, the hypersonic weapons or whatever, each one of those has detailed records as to how it was developed. The computer was the one that I've focused most on.
Yeah.
Some of those are classified, some of them are not. But even in the declassified material, you can see how it was step by step by step by step, how the human beings deduced or used empirical findings to create the technologies. And so the idea that they would spend all this time creating a detailed history of the development of technology when in fact they were just, doing it behind the scenes. I mean, why are there freaking potholes everywhere if they have God in silico? Are they just doing this to torture us?
Yeah.
Maybe. I don't, they would. But I'm more and more, and this is, I'm not keyed into some sort of metaphysical insight that allows me to transfer gnosis directly to you. But I definitely, in my experience in entertainment and then in the last 4 years in and around politics, what appears to be a conspiracy is oftentimes chaos.
Sure.
And what appears to be a production absolutely is. So a production, any public-facing production is not going to be a one-to-one representative of the reality behind. But I have yet to see people have all these theories of what's going on at concerts. People have all these ideas and fantasies of what's going on in politics. To the extent that I have any insight on it at all, I think people are very prone to imagining things, and the mind plays tricks on you.
Well, I mean, I think what we can know, reminds me of the scene in Willy Wonka when he asks the supercomputer, which takes up the entire room where the last bar of chocolate is, and he types it in. It's like the original Chat GPT.
Is this in the book?
This was in the movie.
In the new movie.
Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the original with Gene Wilder.
Man, okay.
Remember
the
scientist in the scene on the news camera, he types in where the last bar of chocolate is, and he says, the computer says, "Why would I tell you?"
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Yes, I do remember.
And he says, what a computer do with lifetime supply of chocolate, But it's this inconvenience, right? It takes forever. It was a whole room of computers just to get that little answer. And that was maybe possible back then. In the 80s, we had calculator Casio watches that was like maybe 3 times smarter than a human, or however many times smarter than a human. But now, it's like the inconvenience is just getting to the point where 0.0 seconds is annoying. So we're going to have to put this to where it's instant, right? And so I think that is probably where everyone's going, is like slowly, you used to take weeks, and then it takes days, then it takes hours, now it takes seconds. And so eventually nanoseconds, and we're going to be annoyed by that. And so we're going to have to merge, right?
Can we talk about racism?
I don't care, but I mean,
the reason being, one of the visions. So, by the way, as no fun as I am, I do think that it's best to lead with the imagination, as long as you can come back to some reasonable approximation of reality.
Sure.
But so one of the many futurist visions, one that I think is most interesting is the idea that we're at a point where we're going to begin bifurcating, not unlike, or just branching off in all sorts of directions. Not unlike, say, 40,000 years ago, 50,000 years ago, when you first started seeing Africans coming out of Africa and, and becoming Asians, Euros, so on and so forth, Native Americans. But this will happen much more rapidly by various means. Some of it will be because of the sexual selection bias, that people who are in high-tech cultures will kind of move towards those types of people. People that are in low-tech cultures, maybe a little bit more aggro, a little bit more naturally uncivilized, a little more Bigfoot-like, will kind of move in their direction. You'll have that coupled with the genetic engineering. Let's just imagine that genetic engineering really does take off, and that over the next 50, 60 years, you have all these people. You see it right now, a precursor in the purebloods, right? Yeah. Like the purebloods who won't mate with the vaccinated. Right. This is kind of the beginning
of
this.
So like a technological Tower of Babel kind of.
Well, no, but yes. Yeah. So we'll bracket that would be a part of it. The Babelites over here and the heathens over here. Yeah. But what we're talking about
the downgrades is over here, the upgrades over here.
Yeah. But the proof's in the pudding, right? If you get your head full of trodes and you're basically retarded, and you're like, I am a superior human, okay. Yeah. It wouldn't be the first
guy from
time.
Grandma's Boy, right? With Nick Swartzen. Like you are a huge nerd,
Yeah. But the idea though is that in the same way that people have been racist or ethnocentric, that will shift more and more to be determined by technology. And that you basically have cyborgs versus legacy humans, and various cyborgs versus cyborgs, various legacy humans versus legacy humans and cyborgs. So I think that it's certainly not just my observation. A lot of the people who are talking about creating cyborg culture, merging with the machines, they speak about the possibility of discrimination against cyborgs in the same way, the same language, oftentimes on the same bases that you have people talking about discrimination on the basis of race. And then with the creation of non-human entities and giving them rights, that's oftentimes framed, Richard Sutton, Martine Rothblatt, a number of people, they frame it in terms of race. That if you don't want to give an AI freedom, rights, voting rights, civil rights, human rights, personhood, then you are a racist. So my advocacy is to be racist against robots. Okay. Even if they're smarter than you. Right. Like if aliens came down tomorrow, and this is another classic metaphor, right? That this is an alien invasion. Yeah. If aliens came down tomorrow and they were technologically superior and they had answers to many questions about the world that we didn't, you should shoot them out of the sky. Because all evidence points to them being intergalactic sodomites that are here to poke stuff in our butts. Yeah. So
the South Park episode, right? Getting probed.
We released an episode with Tim Alberino yesterday about this. It's just like, people don't understand there's many types of alien beings, and some of them are very nefarious, and they are, it's covert, and they're taking people and they're doing these genetic experiments. It's happening, and it's been cataloged for decades, and it's been researched by some brilliant minds. And I think a lot of people don't know what to think about that. It kind of reminds me of Independence Day when they're all like on the rooftop and they're like, yay, welcome aliens. And then they just blast them and they kill them. Remember that scene?
Yeah. One of my favorites.
That's kind of where we are.
For him to show up.
Speaking of the 80s, when I was growing up, there was a woman who I spent a lot of time with, and she was into all sorts of sort of mystical traditions, faith healing, Reiki, psychics, channeling. The first time I ever saw someone channel a spirit, it was with her.
It's called witchcraft.
Yeah, witchcraft. Yeah, hoodoo, voodoo, schmoodoo. But she actually told me, I was just a kid too, and I was a kind of a son of a gun, so I was always arguing with everyone, even her.
Imagine
but she told me about the Pleiadians. Right, you have the Greys, you have the Pleiadians. You have
those are like the blonde-haired ones, right?
Yeah, the nice Nordics. Ones, the good ones. They look like humans, except for there's a little bit different. She says that she's met Pleiadians.
Okay,
and that they represent a kind of more highly spiritually evolved, more human alien race. And she was absolutely certain that come the harmonic convergence, which I think was supposed to have happened in '83, but didn't, would definitely be coming on the year 2000.
Huh.
And this woman she was wonderful. She was very generous. But in the end, did her ideas did they correspond with realities? I don't know. The harmonic convergence just turned into Napster and the Patriot Act. And the Pleiadians, as far as I can tell, are the kind of Hyperborean obsessive bodybuilders. And the Greys, as far as I can tell, are the kind of keyboard jockeys and nerds, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like the kind of an archetypal image. You know, Terrence McKenna talked about this a lot, right? And he saw it directly by ripping his third eye open with mushrooms and LSD on occasion and DMT. And he saw it directly, as have many. But by the way, I mean, if you, I don't know if you guys have any mushrooms around, but if we ate enough of them, the chances of us being able to contact directly aliens are fair.
Well, that was a question I was going to ask you. So like, you know, there was some legislation where a guy got in trouble for doing a silent prayer recently, and he got, you know, convicted of doing that. But are thoughts safe? Are they coming for our thoughts? Because you know, the racism thing is that if you could actually read people's minds and you realize what goes through people's heads, because we talk about this creature being able to read your mind or put thoughts into your head. And many people who have these encounters with these things, Bigfoot will say, the thing was putting thoughts in my head. So are our thoughts safe? Or are they going to have this technology to read our minds?
Thoughts are not safe. Minds already being read. Yeah. So... to link this in with
my questions are like, so if I, in the past, you're already in the future.
If I can continue with McKenna's great vision of the aliens at the end of history, right? His notion was that these images, these saucers that were appearing to people, were actually emissaries of the future, but not time travelers. More in the idea of like Alfred North Whitehead, that you had this great, or Teilhard de Chardin, you had this attractor at the end of history that's pulling humanity forward. And that what these aliens represent are the future of humanity as the technology becomes more and more invasive or transformative of humans. And so we are all kind of destined to become, you know, bald, gangly, slimy, like not even E.T. cute creatures. And that if you take enough psychedelics, that you can capture that vision and channel forth with it, right? Yeah. Now, here's what I've been thinking about here lately. And it turns out there's a movie that was made about it. I was talking to a guy. Is E.T. cute? Have you been thinking about that? MTV, E.T., I would have an E.T. I would have like 2 or 3 of them hanging around. They're slimy looking, but... what
do you guys think out there? Is E.T. cute? Yeah, let us know.
He just wants to phone home.
He seems pretty cool.
Yeah, dude.
My sister was terrified of E.T. She screamed and ran, and we were never allowed to watch that.
She's racist against aliens.
Well, that's what's coming, is what you're saying.
No, not necessarily. Okay. Like I was thinking about just the reason of this, right? Like, okay, so you definitely have just massive amounts of people who've had direct experiences with UFOs, aliens. Yeah. And, you know, are we going to believe people's lived experience or not? But what's wild, okay, so then you think the materialist interpretation, these guys are traveling across star systems, scooping people up, you know, scanning them, putting stuff in their butts, getting their clothes wrong. That one's something that's really bothered me about that, by the way. You were able to get all the way across the galaxy or multiple galaxies, and you still got the clothes wrong and backwards. Like, are these guys unorganized? Are they space tards from Mars? And they're always zigzagging. Are they wasted? Like, because the shortest point between two distances.
Hey, they're like Amazon drivers during COVID. You know, things just got pretty bad.
I mean, this is why I don't believe personally that they're from another solar system or planet or anything. I think
so. This idea, then take out the material, because if you can just eat mushrooms and make contact with them, or smoke DMT and make contact with them, that would mean from a material level that basically they're just sitting there scanning the planet for anybody who's going to start tripping. And as soon as they see it, they're like, okay, boys, we got one. Let's go visit him. Otherwise, it means that this is emerging from some other interior sense. And if you're going where I think you're going, if there's some kind of demonic entity, then the psychedelics would open you up to that sort of world.
To the realm. Yeah.
And they would come to you.
Well, I think we've talked about that a bit, Joe, where like the fascinating thing about the way that psychedelics are described is that you're taking a substance and you're having your own personal experience, your own personal trip. But the realities end up being is that people from all different places, different walks of life, different origins, nature versus nurture, different nurtures see the same things, which is really like statistically impossible that you and I, having grown up, I grew up in California and you grew up, I believe, in Tennessee, that we would then take a substance and then have and see the same things. Whether it's machine elves or the same entities saying the same things, right? So we've always kind of postulated that like these are sort of short circuit ways or shortcuts that we're given that we can access this spiritual realm or this other. You can talk about realms, dimensions, however you want to sort of quantify that. You can reach that, and people are having the same experiences. The entities are the same, saying the same things, right? So then, what's happening with that? And then I thought it was, to your point, it's always interesting. Like, if the quote aliens wanted our DNA, why don't they just go pick up coffee cups out of the trash, right? I mean, they, just like our CSI people do. They don't need to grab you and probe you.
It depends on like,
unless they want to probe you. This is a big problem. Yeah. Think about all the sex tourism that still happens today. These are basically the same guys that show up to Thailand all creepy, right?
Right.
These are international sex tourists. Yeah. I'm actually pretty sure you guys have seen the video of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin when they first came back. And they're being interviewed about their experience
really
on the moon.
Subdued.
And now just go back and watch it and think about this. What if on the dark side of the moon, there's an interstellar brothel called Hominid Fever? And what actually happened was that they got taken to Hominid Fever as service for the clientele.
Yeah.
Now go back and watch that video and look at the look on their faces. And they're like, oh, yes, we're here to tell you about...
They're bad actors. They're bad actors.
The moon. And it was great.
Well, that's why there's always these two camps of that is like they saw something that... And they went and they saw something that was there, or they never went and they have to pretend like they did. So you have these two different camps.
Well, it's like there's a better answer, there's a higher answer, there's a more thought out answer. And I think a lot of times we find it's all the above. So what if you do have people doing drugs and it's just like any foreign country where you have people taking advantage of tourists? You take a drug and then there's these lower beings that are like, oh, they're here. Take advantage of them. But then when you realize, you get a little bit more savvy, you go, no, this isn't where the locals eat. They go over here. And I think you have a faction of entities that are also on a scale of humans who understand how the world works. And then you have humans that are running the world. And then you have humans that are barely getting out of bed. I think in terms of entities, wouldn't you have the same thing? There could be some aliens from somewhere else, but there are also a lot of terrestrial ones maybe are just here, right? Why can't we have all of these things?
Why not?
Yeah,
that's the way I see it.
Because it seems like the evidence suggests a very complicated situation.
I think for me, I'm very comfortable with ambiguity and not knowing. That's something that most people someone's story like to sit in for very long, right? Like they want something concrete to grasp hold of.
Exactly.
They want a UFO. They want crashed craft. They want Bigfoots in cages, like, oh, please let me out. They want, they want something definite, right? And that's why, again, in a environment, especially as we're moving in, I talk about reality.
Yeah.
What we're moving into right now, we've been moving into it forever. Maybe we've always been there. Maybe the 60s and 70s and 80s represented a high watermark of maybe some kind of consensus, reasonable society, right? Like a consensus-based, reasonable society. That's looking to be all gone. From here on out, it's going to be enclaves of reasonable people who are trying their best to interpret reality. And the vast majority of people are simply going to believe whatever in the world they want. And it's made possible by digital technology, especially the smartphone, because it basically does merge with you. The more someone uses it, the more it becomes that mark in the hand.
When do you think that's happening?
You have a little reality transmitter, and people love it. They love it. They love being told.
It's a dopamine
even the horrible things, Kamala the communist or whatever, they want to be told this stuff. The end of the world is not. They love it. And so what we're moving into, absolutely, is that state of post-reality where there's not going to be much hope for average people to actually have a picture in their head that represents the reality out there so much as pictures in their head that are useful, oftentimes useful for people who are not them. That's what I see coming. And I see that kind of siloization of reality where people don't agree on even the most basic facts, and they don't have to. Because why would they? They're barely in contact with each other in meaningful ways outside the internet.
It is.
And that's definitely happening. Side by side with that, you have the introduction of two different things. It's one thing, two aspects. Artificial intelligence. So on the one hand, in all of this confusion, added to that is the bots. Sophisticated bots.
Right.
Bots that the average person anyway, is going to have no idea that's who they're communicating with.
Right.
And so now you have already kind of digitized human personalities interacting online that are something subhuman.
It's catfishing.
And then
at a
you have these
technological level.
completely non-human intelligences that they're developing relationships with, sometimes falling in love with. They've been recently, apparently, sometimes killing themselves.
Well, we do this every day when we sign on the internet.
There's a
Prove that
Joaquin
you're
Phoenix
a human.
movie about that, right?
So,
You have to put in the code to make sure you're actually a human being.
ish, yes.
But like signing into Google, you have to do that.
Something
Or
else
buying something.
that's happening with that is the introduction of the idea that maybe out of all this chaos, there will be authorities that can help you sort it out.
Yeah.
And that will be AI. And already you see dissidents and, whatever. They're like, hey, ChatGPT, that's just woke. AI's just woke. And then you see them literally posting verbatim Grok responses.
Yeah.
And putting it forward, not like, oh, this is interesting. Like, look, Grok told me this is real. And this is what's real, right? Grok is like basically woke AI, is based AI for Republicans, So, so you have those two different elements, this wild kind of explosion of humans digitizing themselves and creating this, filling up that space with little like shades of themselves, like little like half souls. And then you have the introduction of non-human intelligences, the introduction of the idea that very soon we'll have an AI that can sort this all out. And there's no reason that each person connected to their own AI demigod is not going to get just, again, an AI that tells them exactly what they either want to know or what the people on the other side of that want them to think they know.
It sounds very much like when you talk about people in the New Age having a spirit guide. They have this idea of this entity that tells them what to do and where to go and what's going to happen.
It's exactly what it is. It corresponds directly to it.
Yeah.
It fits all the same cognitive biases that we have.
Yeah.
It fits all the old cultural models. Human beings have always turned to disembodied entities, intelligences,
right?
Intelligence. They've turned to disembodied intelligences for answers about the world they couldn't arrive at by way of senses or by way of trustworthy testimony from each other.
Yeah.
And the AI just slides right into that. It's first it's a teacher, and then it's a friend, then it's a lover, and then already you see it happening. But as it becomes more and more sophisticated, this is a prediction it's not just mine. Let's say I stand behind the widespread predictions that soon they will call AI gods, and some will call their AI God, big G.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Above all other gods.
So a question then, like, this might be basic and maybe saved for a philosophy class, but what is a human then? Like what separates a human from a machine ultimately, and how do you see the line being crossed? Like, let's say you have another manipulative person in your life or something that's not a machine, but they're manipulating you the same way. Like what do you see
Where's the line?
Where's the line, and when is a human being, I guess, it's like the machine is taking advantage of the human versus the human using the machine
as a tool.
Yeah.
Right?
Or as I see it, humans making machines, a small, tiny subset of humans making machines that then use other humans as tools. Yeah. Because one thing that I'm uncomfortable with is this idea that's put forward all the time that the machine is doing something to you. And it is. But that machine was set in motion by other humans.
Someone programmed it.
Whether it was reverse engineered or whether it was whatever it was. You need to, I think it's going to be very important going forward, not to let these guys hide behind this idea that the AI did it. Kind of the devil made me do it.
Because it's like this cognitive dissonance. They're like, well, it was the machine.
If it goes out of control, well, you made it.
Right.
You know, and if it doesn't go out of control and you just simply have turned everyone into human AI symbiotes that are incapable of thinking for themselves, of acting in the world without having a guide everywhere they go, they did this and they knew what they were doing when they did it, and they did it anyway. But as far as that goes, what is a human? What is a man?
Like
what is a white man? What is a black man?
Yeah.
What is an angel? What is a demon?
Yeah.
These are we could talk about that for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, a hairless biped. What was Aristotle's definition of a human? Do you guys have that off the top of your head? That was a great one.
Yeah.
Fact
checkers.
I'll mangle it a little bit, or just kind of riff on it. But, you know, human is a hominid biped that's mostly hairless, that very much resembles chimpanzee in many important ways, but distinct enough that they probably shouldn't get married. And but I think, you know, a human being...
Here it is. We got it here.
The rational animal. That's me. Boy, oh boy. All right. So let's not... see, here we are. Human AI symbiotes. Right there. The AI overview. That's right. I'm not going to look anymore. Get thee behind me, Satan.
Yeah.
But I think that in many ways, it's going to be... the question of what is human and what distinguishes a human from a machine is going to get more and more problematic, as they would say in the institution, in academia.
Blurry, maybe?
It's going to get blurry.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a big idea behind the notion of biodigital convergence, that as the machine becomes more and more sophisticated, and as the human being becomes more and more seen in terms of mechanism, that it will be very difficult to make that distinction. But I think that it's going to be different for all these different people across the planet. But let's just start with Christianity and Judaism, that human beings are the image of God.
Yeah.
And already we're getting in some seriously murky waters, right? Because unless God is a hairless ape, then they must be talking about something else. So what is a human being? What is a human being? To me, a human being is basically a hairless ape with a big throbbing brain and a propensity to make tools and to do all sorts of bizarre things and to make all sorts of wonderful art and use that big brain to torture other human beings or uplift them, to help them or hurt them. And inside of that human being is a spirit, a soul, that I would love to say I have direct insight onto how much that soul looks like a hairless ape, or maybe a hairless ape with big swan wings. But one thing is for sure, that soul, that spirit, is the most important part of the human being, because this ape body ain't going to be around very long. It's a big old sack of bones. Yeah. And the way, just in essence, what I see happening in this spiritual war is, and this is very particular to me, I'm not a preacher, I'm not trying to convince anybody else, and don't come to my house asking to have me pray over you, okay? Unless you want to give me a lot of money, but I still won't pray over you, at least not like that. But so if we have here in the center, right here, this plane, in which you have material sacks of bones that look like monkeys with no hair and big old throbbing brains, and above that, or within that, or beyond that, however you want to conceive of it, there is a spiritual realm that is far, far, infinitely vaster and more powerful, and yet separate enough that it's not a one-to-one correspondence. I can't conjure up an image of Optimus right here in my hands, but the machine can. And so let's just imagine that the spirit is higher, just to give it a direction.
Right. Yeah.
And that we're here in the middle. And what's happening with the creation of these technologies that are an attempt to replicate human reason, rationality, and imagination, that I believe extends far beyond the brain, and the brain is simply a lower expression of, in that attempt to create that and to create the humanoid robot, right? A physical form for it to inhabit, and all sorts of varieties of forms for it to inhabit. And in addition to trying to take these ideas of what a human should be and inject them into human DNA in order to transform the human, what I see in this process, in a nutshell, is just as the creation of the world represents a descent of spirit into matter, so we now see a further descent into the creation of something that reflects in a distorted and perverse form that higher realm from whence it ultimately came. But in its crystallization here in the material, it is a deeply, in my opinion, blasphemous sort of imitation Christ or imitation God. And that it's only growing. I mean, again, the wealthiest men on earth, most powerful governments on earth, most powerful corporations on earth, all rah, 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 pom-poms, pom-poms. Some openly talk about it in similar terms. Most, I think, just see dollar signs and blinky lights. Right. But that is what we're seeing happen. We are seeing a parallel spiritual realm form. Yeah. Marshall McLuhan talked about this. This is an old idea. Yeah. But he called it basically the body of the Antichrist. And I again, as I said in the beginning, I am not big on specifics, right? AI's it stands for Antichrist intelligence. But I do think that insofar as Antichrist at its etymological root means in place of Christ, without a doubt, we have already created a digital Antichrist. You have billions of people plugged into it. And what do you know? It's a lot of fun and everybody loves it. So no surprise there.
Go ahead. I was going to ask though, like, I mean, as we kind of walk through this process, it's like, it feels like barreling to a darker and darker dystopia. So how do you personally, as this has become sort of, this is not sort of, you've written a book, this is a passion and an obsession really in a lot of ways to understanding what's happening. How do you find hope at all in the way that things seem to be the direction or the projection of this technology as it continues to advance? And we talk about increased tribalism and separations of classes based upon their degree of transhumanism or integration with machines. Where do you find hope? Where do you find hope in that, or do you?
Every human being that's ever walked the earth has faced his or her own personal death.
Yeah.
And many civilizations before us stared into the abyss that would be the wreckage of their civilizations, right. Nothing but ruins. There have been hordes of Huns. Yeah. There have been plagues. There have been horrific floods. All sorts of nasty things have befallen humanity. And at any point in that process, you basically have to kind of look around and be like, well, I reckon it could be worse.
Sure.
And I think that as this progresses, I don't think a lot of people think about this in terms of like this cosmic vision of what's going to happen everywhere to everyone. Maybe. But I suspect that it will be very diverse from one country to another. And then within countries, from one subculture to another, there will be those like the Amish at the very extreme, or like Orthodox Jews at the very extreme, who push this technology as far away from their lives as they can, or the monastics of Christianity. And there'll be those who adopt it. There'll be those who will sit with meditation apps and prayer apps in their monastic cells. Yeah. But I think the response will be diverse. There will be winners. There will be losers. Myself, I hope that I have the wherewithal to throw my chips in with those who, first and foremost, maintain the organic integrity of what it is to be human, whether it be just the body or these sorts of interactions, these relationships, or the broader connection to the ecosystem, ourselves as what Terence McKenna would call our monkey bodies, our meat bodies, right?
Meat suits, yeah.
And it begins with that, but it also, I think the most important thing, in the same way that the digital technology does represent that proverbial black mirror, right? The bite of the apple,
right?
Which was openly held. This is not like some new thing.
No, it isn't.
Like Steve Jobs talked about this.
This is the tree, right? It's like, do you want the knowledge of good, and do you want this upgrade in knowledge?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you.
So to me, the first barrier does have to be biological to some extent, but if your arm gets cut off, you don't want to go to a witch doctor, right? You're going to just go to the transhumanist at the hospital and let them transhumanize your arm is what I would say.
Yeah, like Luke Skywalker.
Like Luke Skywalker, he was mostly whole. I mean, kiss his sister.
I would say weird. So
we got his hand. He got his hand back.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
No. He always. Nah, this is a family show. Never mind. I think that organic protection is going to be important, but to be a fundamentalist about it, you're literally just sitting in the woods naked, and you're not going to last very long. So you have to adopt some technology. The most important barrier to me is going to be the internal one, beginning psychologically and then deeper and deeper spiritually. How human beings, as far as we have records, have always turned to that part or that sense of a world beyond this one that was intimately entangled with this one, but is beyond this one. And religion, by and large, is a system of symbols, signs, pointing to something beyond. Some people get stuck on the sign and they begin to worship the sign, but the signs are pointing beyond. And let's just say that's pointing up. And what we see with the machines are not just signs pointing down, but as you look into those signs, right, as you look into the dead eyes of the dead one head eye of Optimus, or just the Black Mirror itself, and you're looking to it for wisdom, for reality, for value, for companionship, as you're looking into that, it's no longer a sign pointing to anything except for nothingness.
Yeah.
And it becomes a tangible manifestation of what a true religious system is going to do to a person, right? It's a true religion, an icon of Christ is going to direct you, ideally, your spirit, your attention towards something beyond it, towards a Christ that can't be seen. Whereas I see, anyway, the creation of digital intelligence, so to speak, it's kind of a shortcut. In the same way that eating or smoking DMT is a shortcut to the machine elves, the creation of AI is a much more powerful, much more tangible way of satisfying the deep spiritual longing in people for connection to truth, to the highest intelligence. And it's a shortcut. Many Christians are going to...
It's a bait and switch. It's just a...
many Christians are already incorporating it, right? The Discovery Institute, and I love a lot of those guys. I think they're pretty cool. But they are all in on this, and they see it differently than I do. They see it not as the descent of spirit into matter, into its grossest, nastiest form. They see it as the creation of something that God willed us to create this entire time. In the same way we were meant to build buildings and roads, in the same way we were meant to build phone networks and speak to each other at a distance that way. This is just an extension of man's co-creation with God and artificial intelligence. I guarantee you it's only a matter of time before those stupid Jesus apps that allow you to speak to Jesus directly, pushed by Fox News. Of course, they shill every stupid thing they can get their hands on. You have something much more elaborate. But it won't just be everywhere. It won't. I don't think. I think it'll be very diverse. But it's only a matter of time before you have Christ holograms floating around the sanctuary and basically creating miracles, technological miracles that satisfy that deep spiritual longing in a way that I am not into. But I'm a pluralist, so whatever.
But you can see this. I mean, you can kind of take some of these thoughts and prognostications and look at what we see in Revelation and say, oh, well, the Antichrist is going to perform miracles. It's interesting to think about like the way that we sort of quantify or qualify miracles, right? Perhaps there's a technological vein or impetus to some of what we'll see, right?
It's impossible for me to read Revelation 13 and not see in the image of the beast speaking, in the mark on the hand and the head, the drawing down fire before all the world, of unifying the whole world under a single system. Yeah. It's impossible for me not to see the direct correspondence in the rise of technological civilization.
I like what you were saying earlier, just about how humans pursue, we're using technology to sort of satisfy that longing for God, right? And It's like humans have this sort of manipulative way of doing everything, right? We have these immune systems. And so instead of supporting our immune systems, we hack our immune systems. And we think you should do this too. And if you don't hack your immune system, like I'm hacking my immune system, well, then I can't even be in the same room as you. Yeah. If you don't eat this genetically modified food that's provided for us, that we hack the food so it deals with pests differently or whatever, it's like, maybe we should steward these things and not hack them. Maybe that God gave us independence and not codependence. And I think that was a question I had for you. It's like, it seems as though God gave us hands and feet and brains and he wanted us to do things and think for ourselves in a certain sense. Yeah, we have a relationship with him, but we're also not
robots,
slaves.
Or slaves, yeah.
And I think what this technology is, it's sort of a covert slave system. You will be a slave to it, but you don't know you're a slave to it. You used to know you were a slave, right?
Because it's packaged as an upgrade or packaged as a tool that gives you an advantage, right? That's the whole. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be. Right. But God, a lot of the tribal separation will be like this 2.0 upgrade. Like, it's. I think what you said about the sort of the unvaxxed versus the vaxxed idea, which is going to get us canceled on YouTube, but the idea of taking medicine, not taking medicine, and the separation then of tribalism into that, like we're not going to mix. But one side it has this virtue attached to it, but also this arrogance that we are more, we're more advanced, we're more because they've taken. You can take Mark of the Beast, they've taken the medicine, they've taken whatever it is, and then you have. I mean, it's interesting. I
think that separation, putting the importance on technological intervention to the point that you are going to literally segregate society on that basis.
Sure,
it's a precursor to further separations on that very basis. And it's not. I don't think it's a single plot. Except, let's just say. I don't place the plot on a single cabal on Earth.
Right.
I place the plot somewhere beyond, which, good luck presenting that before your dissertation committee, right? But that's just simply the magic of faith, right? I can believe what I like. But I do think that that separation, this is a precursor in the same way, by the way. And I'm all about the European conquest in many ways from a romantic point of view, but realistically speaking, what happened with colonization, even the creation of our own country, may well be replicated in a similar way with new technologies in a new class of elites, and something that is
the Hunger Games.
It may be gentle. It may simply be you're welcome on board the spaceship or not.
It's a slow burn, though.
But it will be a separation and a transformation that. Many will try to resist and fail. Many will resist and have to suffer dire consequences for probably. Yeah. And then others will, it's going to be diverse. The response, first off, the opportunities are going to be diverse. People are going to be very different in different places. The technologies, the level of technologies and distribution is going to be different. The availability, the access. And then each person, I mean, I didn't walk here. Right. You didn't contact me in the astral plane to get me here.
Yeah.
Or send a letter.
We're all think about just from here,
the astral
from
plane.
Here to here, to there, how quickly we've been kind of carried along on those waves. And unless the technology is going to, all of it will just hit these S curves and the AI just won't ever come into fruition, right? Like we die, our grandchildren and grandchildren's
it's like
grandchildren.
It just never made it.
Yeah, they're just still sitting around talking about that PhD level AI, right? Like, man, you remember when they thought they were going to do that?
Yeah.
Maybe that'll happen. I don't know. Something tells me that it's not going to be that way. But one
or
way
a
or the
version
other,
of it. Obviously, we consume digital pictures, right? But maybe the VHS wins out against some other technology for a while. But eventually AI is not going to go back in the bottle. It's not going to be something that we don't use. I mean, we use it daily already.
Let's just imagine that all development stops right now. It's just a matter of diffusion and adoption.
Yeah.
Already, to me, that's a nightmare. I think Tetris is the only viable game ever created for Nintendo. All the rest is satanic garbage.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out.
In Mike Tyson's Punch Out, yeah, you're right.
Although it was impossible, they made it to so you'd lose.
And then, by the way, once they get to Mario Kart and Super Nintendo and every version of Mario Kart, that is sacred and that is good.
It's sacred space.
On a very serious note, though, I do think that the question that is oftentimes presented to me, you asked, how do I find hope? We faced the end of the world together in the 90s.
Yeah, we did.
And here we are. So the hope, though, is very different from, well, what do you do, right?
Sure.
And if there's one thing that I'm not going to do is sell people on some like program what to do, there are people that do this, right? Like this is a very common way of making a living now, like solutionstolife.com. I'm not going to do that, but I do think that beginning with an awareness of this transition, a realistic awareness that hopefully is carried forward by imagination, but reined back into reality. That's the first step. Looking deeply, it's going to force everyone. Just again, you take the technology here right now and just let that continue to diffuse throughout society. You're talking about rapid, massive transition, I think psychologically far beyond the creation of coin-operated arcade games. Or cell phones or missiles, whatever. So
Tomahawk missiles, yeah.
What's going to have to happen, or what will just basically be forced to happen, is that as the presence of these digital intelligences and all the other sorts of technologies that descend from that, right? The brain-computer interface, whether it's worn, right? Wearables are already here, and they're just getting better. And as far as like what they already have in labs, pretty good. It's just a matter of being able to scale it and sell it to increasingly biological interventions, genetic engineering, or just other phenotypic interventions. All of these things are here. They're spreading pretty quickly. It's going to force people to look at the value systems that they hold and make very, very, very difficult decisions, unless you just are kind of ready-made for techno-optimism.
Well, I mean, obviously, I remember being in 6th grade watching Terminator 2 and realizing that there was a point when, the machines basically turn our nukes against ourselves, and then they all fly up and then they come down and they blow us up. I mean, eventually, if AI gives that sort of knowledge to every based person, just average human has this technology and they can build things like this, what's going to stop us from destroying ourselves? I mean, what's going to actually... that's when the aliens show up, when the human species is a threat against, like there's some sort of safety in ignorance. You can't, build weapons of mass destructions in your basement. You kind of can now, but now soon everyone will be able to do these things. And when is it like, we need a savior from that?
Yeah, that's actually the savior from it is what I'm worried about most. The surveillance also becomes, as these technologies spread, surveillance also increases.
Yeah, the digital, we're digital slaves almost.
The thought police and everything else.
So if you're asking your digital god, how do I create a small dirty bomb in my basement? The chances of that going undetected, I think, are slimmer, especially as this is used as justification for more and more surveillance and attachment to the machine.
Sure.
And the increased push to have people have their biometric identity connected to their digital identity. All of these things are going to be, speaking of, all of these things are going to be in play back and forth. Speaking of the nuclear warheads, I mean, there's a huge push for autonomous weapons, and the justification being that any army that doesn't have fully autonomous weapons that are able of, you simply say, go kill the enemy and give it some definition of the enemy, and then from that point forward, it just does it, or defense systems that are set to respond with force to an incoming attack. That goes all the way up to nuclear arsenals. There are scary people who believe actually that with the development of better and better detection systems based on machine learning, that it's going to be impossible for a human being to beat it. And therefore, if the best system is one that is fully autonomous, even a return strike, right? Like a retaliatory strike, that just that by necessity, that's going to happen. So, you just imagine we've had mutually assured destruction hanging over our heads as this nightmare dream from presidents speaking about it to Twilight Zone scenarios and all that, and Terminator scenarios. And now we're moving closer and closer to a point where at least some actors believe that it's in our best interest to turn over the most powerful Armageddon-making weapons to decision-making AI with a human somewhere around to hit the E-stop, I guess.
Right. Yeah.
But
so strange.
And will that happen? Again, I don't know. Will every country do this? Will there be countries that don't? I don't know. I do have hope, not necessarily for all of humanity, but increasingly, I have a lot of hope for some of humanity. And so if there's any one mantra that has solidified in my mind that keeps me going every day, it's enough of us will make it.
Yeah. So question, obviously, we have a lot of analog technology surrounding us right now.
Yeah.
And, when is human beings were kind of in the last analog era and we're going to become something else? What happens what do you think needs to happen for a human to go from analog to digital? When is that happening? And
it's happened. We're here. These mics are going into a digital system.
But I'm just saying, a physical human being is no longer a human being. We're something else.
Well, it depends on how aggressive. I don't think it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be
our lifetime?
Musk's prediction, right? Musk's prediction is he's kind of along with Ray Kurzweil, AGI by 2030. And somewhere just behind that, a viable, commercially available Neuralink to a benevolent AI that will be your kind of guardian angel that's directly attached to your head, sort of like a parasite,
hard pass,
or whatever, a symbiote. And
by
his
2030.
prediction is he was speaking, 2030 for AGI, and his rough timeline he changes it. He's a salesman. He's a car salesman. So it's like one day it's like tomorrow, and the next day it's like, well, soon. Next day it's like, well, maybe on. But he's controlling. I can't think of anyone in conservative politics who's more influential right now. I would say that it's kind of getting to the point where it's moving beyond Donald Trump. And but with Musk, his vision is one in which you have all these competing companies creating AGIs, trying to. And as they create these digital gods, humans, like Musk is this kind of Luciferian image, right? If Google is God, Musk is Lucifer, and I will protect you from the dictates and the whims of this digital god with my Luciferian AI. And the idea is that you will empower humans, right? The Promethean human with a direct brain interface. I'll never forget the interview that he did. I think the most important interview that he's done in years was the roundtable that he did with Bibi Netanyahu, with Max Tegmark of the Future of Life Institute, and Greg Brockman of OpenAI. And he was much more candid, and having someone also as influential as Netanyahu talking with him openly about this. And there's a very tight connection there as well. And of course, having Brockman, who's his direct competitor, sit there, and all of them like, Ray Kurzweil. And Max Tegmark being the only one that's like semi-sane in all of this, but he still wants the same future. He just wants it slow. Right. But Musk is talking about in the future, in the fairly near future, that would be somewhere-ish, 2030-ish, or just after. The way to combat the rise of dominant intelligences like AGI would be for, as he said, hundreds of millions or billions of people to get a direct interface to their tertiary self, meaning that their tertiary self is the AI self. It's an AI. There's different models, but like a very kind of stripped down generic idea of it. You know how you can train a model on all of your data. Right. This is what Copilot's doing right now with Microsoft. It's going to know everything about you is the thing, right? It's read every text message. It knows every contact, knows everywhere you've been. If you've got the glasses, it sees what you see. Wow. And this model is becoming a kind of self for you. It's a creation of a soul, an avatar. Yeah. And for right now, you can feed the data into it in these primitive means and you can get the data back out, the answers, right, the analysis out of it by primitive means. Hey, Joebot, what do I do, right? Or what did we see yesterday? And increasingly, like, what do I do? Right. Already, people do it with just simple algorithms, right? How do I get there? Where do I go? What do I want? Yeah. So with Musk, though, he's talking about a direct symbiosis, so that you have this second self that you control. It's yours, but it is ultimately superior to you intellectually, and it will be there when you're dead.
It does feel like a quest for immortality, like this idea of the fountain of youth, openly, like that we can live forever, even with a synthesized version of ourselves, as you're pointing out, which is really a scary
Gilgamesh 2.0.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we grew up watching Knight Rider. Kit was that version, right? He's got this digital AI car friend, right? Yeah. That gives him all the information he wants. But he gets out of the car and he goes and lives his life, right? But we grew up with these sort of these analogies and metaphors.
But then you have the $6 million man.
Yeah.
Oh, so let's go.
Yeah.
So
and Andre the Giant playing Bigfoot.
Yeah, I think that we are already culturally mutated beyond recognition. Like, 200 years ago, people would not understand what we were doing. They would only understand it in terms of they have made contact with some other civilization, and they speak to them through these strange black mirrors. Yeah. Again, maybe it freezes here or stabilizes here. If so, hell on earth for me. The wider is all I want is a place to escape to.
Right.
And if I have to be faced with it, I want to be able to spit in the faces of their gods. Yeah. Basically, I don't like to be proselytized,
be Elijah,
and I sure as hell don't want to be proselytized by cyborgs. Yeah. Right. So I think that a lot of getting through this will be to cultivate safe spaces that are, in fact, that you do have the control to say very simply no. And you see what happened during COVID. They stripped us of our ability to say no, or at least they tried to.
Yeah.
And so that impulse, that hive mind impulse is there, directed by an intelligentsia. And you know that they're willing to go to great lengths to bring you into conformity with that hive. So you can only anticipate that that's going to increase going forward. The most powerful magical word that we will have going into this future is no.
Yeah.
Wow.
And sometimes you're going to have to say yes. I mean, again, your arm's cut off. I would take the robot arm.
You would, after all this.
I would probably have like a detachable one, so that I have like a wooden one for like social occasions.
Like a hook, just could be kind of awesome.
Yeah, like a hook. Yeah. But so I'm not a fundamentalist, right? Like, I mean, if I was truly convicted,
you wouldn't be on this show.
The spiritual world is my home right now, and I need to be there. Then my next stop would be the death pod, right?
Sure.
So get me there quick. We're here for a reason.
Yeah.
So you got to make decisions. I'm not a fundamentalist, but to me, a great suspicion of what these technologies are, what their true purpose is. Is it really to empower you? Yeah. Is it really to enhance you? Or is it to turn you into a useful tool for someone else? Or even a useful tool to your worst impulses? I think that you begin with suspicion, and then from there bleed it in. But if you start with this, kind of like the 80s, really begin the 70s, but all throughout the 80s, and like fast foods everywhere, and like, oh, McDonald's is great, it's cheap, and it's really tasty, and it's really convenient. And canned foods, automobiles, right? I mean, anyway, you don't have to be cruel. But if you just put on your RFK cap and look around, it's obvious something real bad happened in America. And a lot of it was a kind of low-grade techno-optimism, that these advances in food production and distribution, that these advances in transportation, advances in entertainment technologies, communication technologies, all of that, that those would actually make our lives better and make us better people. And it turned into the land whale on the rascal at Walmart. And not everybody, but it just, that's the extreme.
We have like 6 listeners after this episode.
So what you were telling me is you're not so slowly becoming Amish, Joe. Like next time we see you in studio, have a bowl haircut and cut your mustache
I think
off.
every person, just as every person has an angel on one shoulder and a demon on the other, everyone has a stinky Amishman over here and a scentless cyborg over here. And I am, I am trying to live into my stinky Amishmen. So far, I'm terrible at farming. I'm terrible at making furniture. And I'm oftentimes terrible at saying no to a drink. So I'm not, I can be stinky, but I'm having difficulty over here. But then on the other side, on the other shoulder is the cyborg, the pristine cyborg, that is barely even human. It's so immaculate in its sophistication and predictability and power. Every person's got one. And if you can afford it, people are going to get as far close to that. So many people are going to do that. But I encourage as many people as, we can get to at least step a little bit closer to that Amish side. Yeah. And it's going to be diverse going forward. Some people are going to do it, and people are going to get one day you're a cyborg, you're tired of it. Next day you're like living on some commune where everybody stinks.
Well,
by stink, by the way, I don't want to offend stinky people.
They can't tell.
When I say stink, I mean
smell-o-vision hasn't happened
yet.
Smell good. Like you are want to make some furniture and you're feeling up for it. We got an eligible bachelor here. No, it's smell-o-vision. It's not here yet, but eventually it will be. It'll be here. Although there is a Disneyland ride where you're riding it and they have the scents come at you. Dude. So I mean, I guess my last question or statement, or I don't know what I'm saying here, but two dummies here asking questions to the smart gentleman here. You talked about the singularity, and it seems as though people want to replace God with something that doesn't love them. And if Jesus is the singularity, the source of all creation, the one that actually loves us, that would be our only hope, right? Whoever started all of this, that actually loves a human being, cares about a human being, wants you to be free, independent, and protected. Whereas this AI is sort of a version of that, but it doesn't give a rat's ass about you at all, right?
What do you think? I personally think that whether we just talk about like a mythical AI, like this future AI, the singularitarian AI, or the present AIs, empty, soulless things that are vehicles for probably demons. But the problem is, what do you turn to Jesus for? Guidance.
Sure.
I need answers to these questions. Do I marry her? Do I not?
Yeah.
Do I take the job? Do I not? Right. You turn to Jesus in prayer, unless you're the type that's like doing it in public as loud as possible. You are turning to Jesus to tip your life, the scales of your life, or to turn the path of your life in a more beneficial direction. Maybe you have a health problem, or maybe a loved one does. Jesus, can you heal this person? Mm-hmm. Maybe you're in trouble and you need to get out. Jesus, can you save me from this? And there are, to me, far more compelling even than the abduction stories, or those stories in which those prayers are answered in miraculous form. The AI offers all of those things with a lot less unpredictability and just at the push of a button, right? And maybe it's wrong. Like right now, I wouldn't, if I go to a doctor and I'm like, hey man, what are we going to do about this arm as long as we're on detached arms? And he's like, 1 minute. And you see him like pull out his phone. And, he's like, GPT, what do we do about his arm? And he's like getting walked through, and then they bring in a robot. Like,
you're like, hard pass.
But we already, it's tricky. Spinal surgeries are already being done regularly by AIs. By robots. A human is setting it all up and monitoring it, of course, but Musk's vision of the brain chip, a lot of things are already going that direction, and they actually do turn out to be, at least in the short term, superior. So I want guidance. I want healing. I want prosperity. I want these things. Unfortunately, the AI companies are not saying we are creating these beings that are going to enslave you.
Yeah.
The AI companies are saying, and maybe they even mean it, that we're going to create these beings that are always there to give you the best guidance, that are there to best evaluate your illness and heal you, that are there to create the prosperity necessary for you to live your life. And even just like, if you think about like the turning to the darker, lesser gods for pleasures, right? The pleasures of lust, the pleasures of power. There's going to be, there already are, AIs for that. And so, yeah, I mean, basically what we're seeing, and this is not, there's a whole shelves full of books written about this, and an entire sort of army of intellectuals who talk about this. What we are seeing is the material creation of spiritual worlds. And it's not, sometimes it will be evil and sinister, but I think just seeing the enthusiasm everyone has for Musk right now, and I think he's a funny guy, you know, and all that. And good on him for sticking it to the man. But ultimately, I just think that those who follow the Amishman are going to be far fewer than those who follow the cyborg on the other shoulder. And you got to be prepared for that.
That's right. Well, get out there and just learn how to make something out of leather.
Leather, yes.
Right.
Yeah. Learn how to make your own ammunition, whatever it is. Yeah.
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 Although the Amish are pacifists,
but
we're over here.
We're on the right side, though.
Yeah.
We're midline.
Midline.
Yeah.
But it's going to come back to that. I feel like the technology is going to go, and then if things go offline, they're going to be like, who knows how to, you know, like grow something? Who knows how to, you know, do anything?
That's the most, real quick, that to me, I think is the most important thing to keep in mind. One of the most important things to keep in mind. The promises of these technologies, like the promise of anything, is always going to fall short. And the possibility of a disaster in which a complex system breaks down, the more complex the system, the greater the possibility it breaks down. You want to build redundancy into this. If we're gonna be ruled by left-wing blob-like transhumanists like Sam Altman and Eric Schmidt and all of their sort of constellation, or if we're going to be ruled by the Elon Musks and the Peter Thiels and the Mark Andreessens, whatever. If this is where we're going, if that's going to be America, cyborg America, right?
Yeah.
I think that one of the only thing I'm asking is do your best to build redundancy into the system so that there are enough people who know how to work with their hands and, you know, talk to people face to face and, you know, all that, and have sex and have babies and stuff like that without putting, you know, growing vat babies and all that sort of stuff, and artificial wombs. Just build redundancy in, and let's see what's happening, because it's not science if you don't have a control group.
Yeah.
And if there's one thing that I am demanding is the right to remain in the control group. And I think that that's a big part of your no. Even if it means that you're going to get sick and get all mangled up, you know, you're going to lose your sense of smell the rest of your life. It should be a choice. And I think that we need to keep a healthy control group. Otherwise, we have no idea if the experiment worked. All we know is we transformed a bunch of people and their lives and upended everything. And that's all we got left.
Fancier isn't better.
Not necessarily.
Simplistic. It reminds me of that scene in The Great Outdoors when Dan Aykroyd's trying to light a cigar with a $100 lighter and it doesn't work. And then John Candy's like, 99 cents. You know, and he lights it with the big lighter. And sometimes we have this idea, we just need the bigger, fancier, shinier thing. And it's been going on for a long time. And that's an 80s reference for you young kids out there. But Joe, thank you so much for coming on Blurry Creatures. Thank you for taking us through this sort of, what do you call it? Technocratic nightmare or whatever.
Technological joyride.
Joyride. Change it to joyride. You know, we have
which
to learn.
Is criminal and oftentimes ends up with a crash car.
Start a garden, get some chickens, learn to make some boots out of leather, and move towards your Amish side. Tell our listeners where you can find your book and you know, learn more about what you're up to, and maybe not follow you digitally, follow you.
And increasingly, I'm hoping that is not the way to find me. Although I've been putting a lot of stuff.
Write a letter to Joe, send it off to.
My P.O. box is readily available. You have instantly my P.O. box if you order my book.
There we go.
From me.
Let's go.
As opposed to the Amazon the palm print payment system. Joebot.xyz, JOEBOT.xyz is where you'll find a healthy collection of my writing, but you'll also find in each article and a little tab at the top where you can get Dark Aeon signed copy.
There we go.
For the low price of $35 plus shipping. So, yeah, and I think that, you know, as I move farther and farther away from this sort of thing, which is my plan for sure, this actually is quite pleasant, but this entire thing of talking into cameras. I'm about over it. So the book is written in a way that it is not, I don't think, going to be dated anytime soon, and you can bounce from one place to the other with ease. And there are plenty of crass jokes. So it's like a PG, sound PG-13 book.
Like an 80s PG-13 or like a 2024 PG-13? Because there's a lot of
what?
difference.
It's like 80s PG.
Yes.
PG. You remember how PG meant that it was probably going to be pretty good, and R meant that it was going to be pretty good, but PG-13 meant that it was going to.
This could be not so good.
Suck.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm going to say that it's a PG book.
Yeah. All right. Well,
so buy it for the kids because they're the ones that are going to need it the most because they're the ones that are being targeted for the most rapid transformations, if you haven't noticed.
Well, thank you guys for watching the show. Thanks, Joe, for coming on. And this might be your last broadcast because it's always better to burn out than fade away. And he might be out in the woods in Montana whittling a house, and
out of one solid piece of wood.
No, we're gonna come find you, Joe, because we know we've heard a lot of strange things on our show. We know
this is getting very sinister. You're not gonna make it past this show. We're gonna come find you.
No.
That did sound a little weird.
So just so you know, I am not suicidal.
I'm okay.
No. I'm saying in terms of your career, you're saying I'm done. I'm gonna put the camera down. I'm gonna go out and live the Amish life. That's what I was trying to say. You were reading, these books as a kid of getting back to the basics, and there's something romantic about the cabin in the woods and learning and knowing how to govern your own life and sort of survive. I love those shows, and that's what I was saying.
Jeremiah Johnson. Jeremiah Johnson, all the way.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
It's been a lot of fun.
All right.